This is getting that kid in there, immersing him into this, getting his parents to reinforce this to him, and then putting him into an entire little subculture that believes everything they believe until an age where he hits a point where he's probably not likely to question it, or if he does question it, as I said, he'll come out, not do very well, go right back into religion. We see this all the time in our viewer mail.
And I would say that the kind of political extremism that you're talking about, right, is a similar form of extreme irrationality.
Yes.
However, the difference would be between those two things that religion and politics address different human needs, right? Religion addresses...
Yeah, in many cases, equally efficiently.
Yeah, but you have to, at the same time, you don't tend to see, well, again, maybe today we're seeing more of it just because we've become so polarized in this country. But political movements come and go, and they flow a bit, whereas religion tends to be a very real constant in our culture, right, also. So I'd say, I would say that there are perhaps, well, I don't know if I would even call them minor. There are significant differences, and significant similarities between the two.
Yeah, I would say if you take an example of like Nazi Germany, that to me was ramping up politics like a religion. I mean, you don't see that normally. I mean, at least not in the United States. That would not be a normal
the cult
thing.
of personality,
right? Where
Hitler,
you're just like
right,
taking the kids and throwing them into this and just really brainwashing them. That's not quite what politics is in the U.S. I mean, yes, it's slanted, and yes, you get marketing, and you get lies and damn lies and statistics and all of that. But it's still not the same sort of immersion that you get with religion in this country, which I think there are political systems that do act like religion in that regard. We just don't seem to have them here.
Well, we do have them. They're just not vast enough to gain the absolute power. That I think that very much, there are figures on maybe there's some on the far left, but I definitely would think that there are figures on the far right that are certainly, I think, embracing this whole cult of personality aspect.
Well, yeah, but what I'm saying is you're not taking your kids 3 times a week to hear lessons from these people.
No, you're not, but you're on the internet every day.
Well,
so
sure.
it's a different kind of immersion. So like I said, I think there are similarities that should concern us between those things.
Let me ask you this then. Do you have a good reason for, and probably you do, but what would be the good reason for focusing on trying to dismantle a specific institution that monopolizes on the inherent irrationality of people, as opposed to trying to find ways of addressing the irrationality itself as a root cause?
I wouldn't have any problem with somebody who wanted to address the irrationality itself. This particular program deals with religion because religion is a gigantically harmful institution that causes death and horrible things all around the globe. So I look at that as like a gigantic block in the wall.
Yeah, this is an atheism show. It's not a politics show.
Or it's not even a skeptic show for that. I mean, we support skepticism, but that's not what the show is. It's skepticism aimed at, from an atheist perspective.
But in a general sense, I mean, I would say, to answer your question, my focus would be on skepticism and critical thinking in all areas, in all walks of life. So, it wouldn't be necessarily, my focus wouldn't be, well, all we have to do is wipe out X institution and all the stupid thinking will go away.
We could just as easily be sitting here saying, why aren't we out cleaning up the BP oil spill? I mean, there's plenty of causes in the world. This is the one that we take on.
Yeah, so it's, I would definitely say you encourage the critical thinking and rational thinking first. That's how you have to then the institutions hopefully will take care of themselves.
Yeah, and for me, one of the worst things is just seeing what's done to children. I mean, that's what gets me, is that it grabs people at an incredibly young age and just throws them into a systematic indoctrination like nothing I've ever seen personally.
No.
So,
do you guys have other callers on the line?
Yeah, we do.
But those are really good questions, Luca. We appreciate it really much.
Okay, thanks, Luca.
Good food for thought. Thanks, man.
Okay, it looks like next up we've got Jeremy on line 1, I guess.
Yeah, so before we go, I wanted to follow up on some of what you just mentioned there, the whole indoctrination of children aspect of it, and that's certainly something that Dawkins brings up. And that just reminds me of talking to a really good friend of mine who's just come into town, and I hadn't seen her in some years, and she was telling me about this experience of just before she got to Austin.
Sure.
She was staying with a friend of hers up in like the Tyler area, and some girl she's known for ages. And this this woman has gotten very caught up in the Seventh-day Adventist culture that is in that area.
Sure.
And just explain to me just the disturbing aspects of all of this. And these people really do sort of move into your lives and take over. You know, they have their little, it's similar to, the way she described it, they operate, you know, similar to, you know, the Mormons where they have little guys
right.
and they come to the house and they're wearing their little tags. And she said she was there visiting, she had her friend's house and just doing some stuff, right? And these two guys just walked in, right, as if it was their house. And, you know, just and sat there and questioned her about, you know, this or that other aspect of her life. And there was this very weirdly controlling aspect to the whole thing. And then she said she also went with her friend to there's this lesson with her friend and her kids. She has these 4 kids. And observed this lesson having all to do with sin and the concept of sin and how, you know, and here's little Johnny and he's committed a sin, so what must he do? Right? And it was filling their heads with this whole idea of sin and guilt and punishment and redemption. And this is all like, you know, how to be a good family classes, right?
Correct. Yes. It's disturbing.
And my friend was, and she's telling me, you know, and what was so baffling about it, she said, was that there was nothing, zero zitch, you know, nothing.
Yes.
In that whole lesson, you know, about love, right? They never said anything like, hey, go up to your mom someday and just give her a hug and tell her how much you love her for all the things she does for you. There's nothing like that.
Right. Because, the first step is to convince you that you're depraved and that you need salvation. And without that,
and then it's an authoritarian system, right?
It's you need this.
Yeah. Because any sort of love in that kind of religious context exists within an authoritarian framework.
Yeah. You just condemn everything that is like natural and human, and you call it evil.
Yeah.
And then you say that you need to be saved from this evil that you can't get away from. And it's like, no, I can't get away from being human. I mean, I'm not allowed to see an attractive person and think sexual thoughts. Like, that's really hell-worthy. I mean, that's normal.
Yeah.
And to tell people that they're awful for being normal, there's something really wrong with that. Okay. We got line 1, Jeremy, I think, here from St. Louis, Missouri. Jeremy?
Hi, Mom.
How are you?
Hi, Tracy. Hey, Martin.
Hey.
Hi. Before I ask my question, just want to say sorry about the whole Texas school board.
We don't blame you.
Yeah.
No,
well,
yes, we're sorry too.
One of the few good things that may come out of that is that the state is so damn broke we may not be able to afford those stupid textbooks after all. So, you know,
yeah, Illinois got that problem too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. But my question was about evolution being tied into atheism. I know that there are atheists that don't accept evolution. I think it's fair to say that the majority do.
Right.
But there are also many theists that do accept evolution. And, like, in regards to, like, there being a connection with evolution and atheism, I know Tracy on a previous show said that there was, like, I think the term she used was a non-factor in regards to, like, theism and religion. Like, specifically, I think she mentioned Christianity. But, like, I'm not trying to throw you guys, like, on the show against each other, but I've seen shows where you have, like, the Darwin fish on the desk in front of you. And that's, like, kind of, like, well, at least to me, it's implying that, like, evolution, like, destroys God, and that, like, at least gives me that impression. And I was just wondering if you could, like, kind of, like, talk on that, because I think it's a reasonable question, because there are many, like, great thinkers that differ on this question. I mean, if you could ask Stephen Jay Gould the question, he would most likely say, I mean, what's the problem? But if you were to ask Dawkins, well, he wouldn't have that answer.
Okay, Jeremy, with regard to, okay, first of all, you understand atheism is not believing in God, correct? We're on the same page. Okay, and then the question is, how would evolution impact whether or not someone believes in a God? The only way that I can think of that it would have that impact would be if a person attributed speciation to God, correct? Okay, so you've got some people who are attributing speciation to God, and they're doing it from a creationist standpoint, because as you say, there's other Christians who accept evolution, so they see God as responsible for speciation through evolution. So you're appealing, there's an appeal to a very tiny group of Christians who accept really hard creationism and say that, you know, this is what God did. If evolution hits that person, it's possible for that person's theism to be impacted by a theory like evolution. So they see that, oh, there is this real explanation that I can see works, and it's not what I thought God did. And if a lot of their belief in God hinges on that creationism, then they will be impacted. And there certainly are people who contact us and say, I learned about evolution and became an atheist. So for them, I'm sure that in their head that was very connected. But the reality is, you're operating from a fallacy when you accept creationism. So when you're attributing it to God with zero evidence, that's the error. It's not because you haven't seen evolution yet. It's because you're believing something you shouldn't be believing in the first place. So if they were able to see the fallacy in that without ever seeing evolution, if they ever investigated it and said, you know what, there's no reason for this, for me to believe this, that would tear them away from that as well. It's just that they didn't see that. But the fact is, they believed something that shouldn't have been believed based on zero evidence, and that was why evolution impacted them, because they were in a fallacy that they didn't recognize to begin with.
You kind of had to jump into it.
I'm sorry, what?
Since there's I guess you're trying to say since there's no evidence that to believe it, that's the key issue.
I believe that's the problem, because if they were hinging their belief in God on an idea of creationism for which they have no evidence, then they've got a problem already outside of evolution. I mean, they should, in my mind, they should be seeing that. Whether or not they ever accept evolution, they should be able to see clearly that there is no evidence to be believing what they're believing. That's the problem. But they will connect that. There are people who have said, you know, once I recognized evolution was true, I just gave up belief in God, because they were hinging that on creationism. But really, to me, the problem is the fallacy that they were hanging on to. And if evolution made them see that fallacy, that's fine. But they should have been able to have that fallacy demonstrated to them, regardless of whether or not they adopt any other, idea of speciation.
Yeah. I think Dawkins' point was that, his quote from Blind Watchmaker, which is that evolution does not necessarily lead to atheism, and there is not a necessary link between the two, but evolution does make it possible to be an intellectually satisfied atheist. And what he means by that is that it does give valid and confirmable, non-religious explanations for the diversity of life. But you're right. There are a number of theists, theistic evolutionists, and most creationists absolutely hate them. So I think that what you're looking at in creationism is that creationism, you have to remember, is more of a doctrinal response to of evolutionary science, and it didn't really become very aggressive until after Darwin's theory was published, and then in the last century and a half. So it wouldn't say, I don't think that there is a necessary link, but for an atheist, evolution just does make it easy to understand that you don't need invisible magic beings to explain these things. And it isn't just evolution either. I think that any real valid exploration into the sciences will help you understand the natural world better, and the more you know, the less you have to fall back on supernatural or magic explanations for things.
Right.
Because many times what you're doing with those explanations, those beliefs, you're just filling gaps in knowledge. And the problem that I see now with all of us living in what should be a rational age, a scientific age, is that people still will fill gaps in their knowledge with beliefs rather than scientific knowledge, because there are things about the beliefs that are emotionally satisfying, that address particular psychological needs that they might have. And science, if it does anything well, is very good at throwing cold water on human self-importance. And I think one reason that creationists dislike evolution so much is that it punctures this whole notion that we are somehow special little snowflakes, that we are the special creation of some loving celestial being that has put all of this here for us, and that we're at the center of it all, and it's really all about us all the time. Evolution essentially says we're part of nature, and we've come and we will go, and something will come along to replace us. And it's a big cycle, and someday it will end.
What I think is really sad about what you're saying, I mean, I agree with what you're saying, but what strikes me really sadly is that the fact of our being able to see ourselves as special is like meaningless in the framework of religion. It's like, so it's just in your head. Like, it doesn't matter that human beings see human beings as special. I mean, if God doesn't see you as special, you're worthless. And if it's just you, then it doesn't matter.